selected topic 6, non-standard contract management, and it's a part of the subject building industry contracts. The image you're looking at there is the experimental music project building in Seattle. Phenomenal building. I'm sure they didn't use a traditional lump sum contract to build that, but anyway, we'll come back to that a little later. Before we get too far into this presentation, let's just quickly summarise the course. If you have any questions, you can either contact me directly, you can post a question up on the Q&A forum or in the student forum as well and discuss it with other students. Be very clear about assessment submission dates. Be very clear about the presentation and assessment format as well. Remember, this PowerPoint presentation is really a summary of the study guide. It does not replace the study guide. So we're really looking at the client-contractor relationships and how their choice is influenced by particular circumstances. And coming back to that relationship from a contractual point of view, we already know that there's a number of formats out there: traditional, design and construct, cost reimbursement, cost plus, and they're clearly scoped and understood. But large-scale projects now in agreement, such as build, operate, transfer, and public-private partnerships, partnering, these offer real essential differences in delivering an asset, and quite often a public asset, with regards to financing, operating and maintaining. The picture or image that you're looking at there is it's the South Bank TAFE in Brisbane. It was built as a public-private partnership, and it was really the result of looking at the whole area that really needed redevelopment. Such a large project, $230 million. The outcomes were very clear by the government, what they knew they needed, and also the risk in putting up the type of money to actually get that delivered on time and on budget. So a consortium was put together called Axiom, and this is a great example of how public-private partnership and the transferring of risk and also the building on the relationships in these non-standard forms of building contracts can be demonstrated. If we consider traditional versus the alternatives, there's a number of different reasons why you might consider looking at an alternative range of building delivery, and often it's issues such as the length of time from inception through to completion, trying to negate projects overrunning their contract periods, final costs being higher than expected, quality control is always an issue, the mismatch between design and construction, the getting the legal line of responsibility clear, litigation on any procurement advice that may be given, and the risk borne by the client, and finally probably one of the most important hits out of this is the financing costs, which is 100% at practical completion. So we can say on the collaborative, which is the partnering, in the bottom square there, we can say that it's used generally on larger projects, and equity and financing are shared in this, but the builder, he definitely buys into the development. There's many issues that governments and larger clients need to consider when choosing a non-traditional procurement path, and I've listed them out here briefly. The size, whether if it's too small, it's not going to be suited to a partnering arrangement. Design, generally require large prototypes. Cost, competition, as we talked about in earlier presentations. It's very important to get the competition of the marketplace involved. The timing and the completeness of it. Quality is a very big issue. Accountability, that's what the government's looking for. The organisation, in the sense that it doesn't need to be so complex. It needs to have standard procedures and responsibility and an easy line of command. The risk, that evaluation of the risk then, it's the transfer and control. Who's going to take on that risk? Often the builder or the consortium in place. And looking at these type of consortiums, because they're usually quite large, the workloads and the effect of any procurement advice that the builder or the consortium's giving the client. And most importantly, out of this is a positive and reliable payment system and finance system, that there's remedies for default and funding charges. If we look at a very simple layout of public-private partnerships, it's very simple. You can see the main line is between the buyer, the client, and the project company. And what's interesting here is that I need to emphasise that PPP, or public-private partnership, is still relatively new in Australia, only for larger projects generally, with Victorian roads and prisons and that type of thing. It hasn't really been tested by time, and the strategy generally is, the way it's been looked at, is it's a win-win arrangement. So for the public, they see the public sector, they see it as a whole life approach to not just the asset but the whole service delivery, and this makes it a highly attractive way of delivering a project. And as I said before, in this country, in Australia, it's still fairly difficult, where there is a lot of literature out there, and literature from lawyers, bureaucrats, economists, and plenty from academics as well, about the merits of this type of alliancing and PPP approach, and yet there's not a great deal of active experience in the market currently. If we consider the arrangement of a PPP project, then it can really, the privately funded models can involve a variety of models, including BOOT, which is build, own, operate, transfer, and variations on that too, so to just build, own, and transfer, build, own, operate, and because of these, they all involve the creation of the asset, the public getting the benefit of private sector financing, and long-term private sector ownership and control of the asset throughout the concession. So there's a long-term obligation associated with the PPP delivery. The framework from governments is generally very clear. Its emphasis on service. It's the benefits of private sector financing, long-term private sector ownership and control, the obligations overall. But the real benefits, as I said earlier, is that whole life costing of infrastructure and the related ancillary services, and even more so, the optimal risk transfer, a vehicle for transferring that risk from the government out to an entity, and the private sector innovation. There's a real bonus there of getting real ingenious design and delivery process along with the asset maintenance and long-term management. The sectors that are now employing this form of asset delivery, it's phenomenal. If you look at purely economic infrastructure, there's roads, rails, ports, telecommunications, water treatment, defence and energy. This is all happening in the United Kingdom at the moment, with some of those infrastructure projects now starting here in Australia. From a social infrastructure point of view, we're now seeing hospitals, waste management, prisons, not yet many police headquarters, and courts, those type of buildings being introduced and delivered through a public-private partnership arrangement. So if we look a simple diagram to sort of show the flow there, the consortia or the organisation is invited to bid. The land is usually leased from the government. The government need to monitor performance during the transfer period. This is always the case. But really, as I said before, there must be something in it for the consortia or the organisation to take this on, because of the single point of responsibility and the risk for the consortia. But having said that, there's a guarantee for the community as well. My biggest question at the moment in PPPs in Australia is where is the operation data coming from during that tender period? What's it based on? It's quite often hard to actually develop the type of maintenance or operation data unless you're actually in that business yourself. And most of the delivery consortia now, you'll see a mix of builders as well as facilities managers, asset managers, and some building cost engineering firms. Design and construct model is extremely popular way of getting an asset delivered on time and on budget. It doesn't always give us the convenience of maintenance and asset management like build, own, operate and transfer. But what it does do, it actually it satisfies the client's requirements with timing and often cost. There's often a little problem possibly with quality, but having said that, design and construct really was born out of the client's dissatisfaction with previous models, relationship of contract arrangements such as traditional. Important to remember that there's a series of factors that really need to be considered before going to a non-traditional, non-standard contract management delivery. And as I said, the nature of the project, the size, the sheer scale of it, what type of information is available, locations of the work, speed of the construction, what's the national economic situation and the stability of building labour rates, the prices of materials at the time that we're going out and putting this together, as well as, as I say, the availability of labour and materials, and suitable builders or consortia, with the advantage of getting an early appointment of these people on board as well. So the magnitude of carrying costs, that's the other thing. It's going to be financed by this organisation. Do they have the capacity? And what type of financial control do they share in this type of arrangement? And being able to clearly identify that the builder's know-how, along with the desired date of commencement and construction work, it all needs to be considered. Come to the end of the topic 6 presentation, and it's a excellent time now for you to go through and read the study guide on the relevant sections, as well as the reading and the subject text for this particular topic. Make sure you have work through the workbook activities, and if you have any questions, post them to the Q&A forum or contact me directly.